What are my 10 favorite Batman stories to read? You better listen in. Hey, Batman fans. I've got a bunch of comic books that you need to read, things that maybe you haven't heard of before, or things that are classics that would make your favorite list. I've got a ton of Batman books in my collection. I think I got like 3 short boxes, a bunch of slabs, and then a ton, like an entire shelf and a half just of trades and omnis and collected editions for Batman because he's one of those characters that's like an easy entry point for a lot of collecting fans. And it's kind of like Spider-Man for the Marvel universe. So what I did was I sort of culled it down to 10. I've got my top 10 and 2 of them, maybe you might argue, are they a Batman book? But he's got such an extended universe, so many villains and Bat family characters that it can become tricky when he's on the periphery of a story. So we're going to start with one of those. This is an omnibus that's really reasonable. You should check it out. It's got a massive amount of story, and it's Gotham Central. I've probably read this 3 times now. It's just a really powerful read. Ed Brubaker, Greg Rucka, Michael Lark. It's just a really strong story set in the Batman universe, but from the perspective of the police officers dealing with the cases that Batman brings up. So you get a little bit of that animosity of feeling like this guy's stepping all over our toes. You get a little bit of the horror and the fear of facing villains that are way above your pay scale, right? When these characters deal with, Mr. Freeze, when they have to battle the Joker, there's this intensity that they capture in the story that is absolutely riveting. Batman obviously plays a small part in this. He is not a lead character, but he is sort of in and out of the story all the way through, and he sort of looms over everything in it. So in that way, I'm counting it, but I understand that's why it's number 10. Maybe it doesn't count as much as others. Next up is another one with Batman on the periphery. I'm going with a really great Chuck Dixon book, and that is Robin Year One. I would argue Dick Grayson is my favorite Bat character. I've enjoyed him as Robin, Nightwing, as part of the Teen Titans. So he's a character that I've followed a lot as a kid growing up. I read, when he was Robin, and then of course Teen Titans, I became a fan, and then now Nightwing. I love the version of him we got as Nightwing. This story does a great job of sort of capturing his coming of age, his earliest cases and challenges. And it's done in the style that feels kind of retro, right? The look of it is kind of a throwback. I love the design of it. The character work, the artwork really is something interesting. It feels very cartoon like. It gives me the animated series kind of vibes. And it is something that I just find absolutely riveting. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. They have a real nice hardcover, which is my favorite way to read it because it's a little oversized and you can really see the artwork. All right. Well, let's go with one that's a little older. If you haven't seen this book, Jim Starlin, Bernie Wrightson. Yeah, this is Batman the Cult. If this is a wild ride, it's kind of psychedelic. The artwork plays into the fact that there are moments when Bruce doesn't know if what he's seeing is real or is it fake. It has a lot of intensity. Batman is captured by a cult leader. He's given some drugs and they're trying to reprogram his mind. And he is left at the mercy of this kind of creepy cult leader. The design and the style of it is really wild. And in the end, the journey of Batman to find his way is really strong. Wrightson and Starlin, obviously 2 icons of comic books. So if you haven't heard of this one, I highly recommend checking it out. I have this very old trade. I'm fairly certain this is probably from the early 90s, mid 90s. But yeah, absolutely worth finding if you haven't heard of Batman the Cult. Like I said, I'm a Robin fan. And when it comes to some of the other Robins that have worn the costume, I really do enjoy the Red Hood. This story, which is the follow up to the death of one of the Robins in the Batman Death in the Family storyline, this is a really great way to bring the character back again. I feel like sometimes it's easy for the Robins to be dismissed as just fodder for the villains. But this really highlights the trauma that can go along with being Robin and the difficulties that that can have. This spun out of the Hush storyline, and the ideas that were planted there by Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb kind of led them to realize, hey, what if we followed up on some of that? This is a really large trade paperback. It's got a ton of issues in it, so you get a whole kind of look at the character, the story, and the return of Jason Todd. Right, we get to see him come back in this new form as the Red Hood. So this is a really great lore for the Bat family, and if you haven't checked out Batman Under the Red Hood, worth the time. Definitely worth the time. All right, well, let's go with one that people might be surprised didn't even crack my top 5. This here at number 6, yeah, on the list is Batman Dark Knight Returns. This is the classic tale that a lot of people think of when they think of Batman comic books, which is a shame for me. As much as I love it, as much as it is like quintessential reading and important reading, I guess the problem for me is, for some people, this Elseworlds Batman became their vision of how Batman should always be. And that's where I think this falls apart. It's not in the book itself, but in the legacy that it's had. People trying to take this and make it the definitive Batman when it's clearly an Elseworlds story. I love it. I think the artwork is really interesting. I think that the design of Batman is really fantastic, and seeing him aged up and seeing how he relates to this new Gotham and some of his friends, that's where this book really has a lot of juice, and I think I'm entertained by it the most. So, but it's not a top 5 for me just because of the legacy that it seems to have now, where people want to make Batman the Punisher, and the Grim Knight and stuff is basically a spin-off of this version of Batman, and I don't care for Batman with machine guns killing guys. That's just me. Sorry. All right, so now we're cracking the top 5. That was number 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So top 5 here. These are just must reads for me. These are ones that I read several times a year usually. And we're starting off with Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison. This is a really phenomenal book that is psychedelic. Dave McKean, who did a lot of stuff for Vertigo, has such a phenomenal art style. And this storyline where Batman has to like deal with the people and inmates of Arkham as he's in there trying to stop an overthrowing of the estate, and Batman is coming in as their prisoner inside. It is a wild ride, and every page has just something to captivate you. It really is a creepy gore fest. If you like your books with a little bit of abstract artwork, this is going to be one that I think you'll absolutely love. It's anyone who loves the video game. It's not really directly linked to the video game as far as I know, but instead it's maybe the impetus, the inspiration perhaps for the video game in some ways, Batman and dealing with the inmates rising up inside of Arkham Asylum, right? So this, yeah, worth the time. It's a much skinnier trade paperback, so you should be able to find it for a good price. All right, top 4. I mentioned it earlier, but we got to have Hush in there. This is as a classic. They got Hush 2 coming up here soon. If you didn't know that they're coming back again, Loeb and Lee, and I'm excited to see what the next phase of this journey might be. Hopefully it's half as good, at least of this one. The artwork from Jim Lee is, I would say, the best part about it. Some of the mystery and the plot and the twists maybe don't hold water a ton, but I feel like I love the fact that the whole Rogues Gallery gets to jump in here, the whole Bat family gets to play their part, and everybody gets that sort of lush, incredible Jim Lee treatment. His art style is phenomenal, and getting to see him shine and get the chance for him to really play in this playground in a big way, that was the highlight of this. And I remember grabbing these issues off the shelf and just feeling like each time I read a new issue, I was being thrilled by the excitement of these characters and Jim Lee's creating his versions of them, So yeah, absolutely a must read, phenomenal book. And you may have started noticing Jeff Loeb shows up here a lot because we're in my top 4 and he's got 3. So I'm a Jeff Loeb fan. I do like his vision for Gotham, and I think that his view of Batman aligns really well with mine, at least. So let's do another one. We got Superman Batman. This is the original volume 1. And if you can find this larger trade paperback version, the beauty of it is you get Ed McGuinness artwork and Michael Turner artwork because it's the first 2 big story arcs together. The first one has to do with them battling Metallo, and it's just a good setup for the design of the book where you have dueling narration from Superman and Batman. The second story has to do with Supergirl coming to Earth, and that story is done by Michael Turner, and it might be my favorite of the 2. But overall, it's really just a great look at the dynamic between these 2 characters, the way they both see the world similarly and differently simultaneously. So if you haven't read this volume, this collects the first 13 issues, and that's just excellent reading. You'll absolutely love it. All right, top two. Top two, we got more Jeff Loeb. So we've got The Long Halloween. This is the absolute Batman edition. Whoa. It's a great way to read this story, even though it is massive, but it's oversized. All that phenomenal Tim Sale artwork is given a moment to really take over the pages. This story for me feels more like Batman Year 2 than the story Batman Year 2. I really do love the design of it, the feel of it. It really captures what I wanted from Batman Year 2, but I didn't get because Batman Year 2 felt a little flat. So this story, for those who don't know, is 13 issues long. It's from one Halloween around to the next Halloween, and it is a murder mystery. And each month, the holiday killer is murdering people in Gotham, and Batman's trying to solve the mystery. And it's a very entertaining mystery. I don't know how well the the plot holds water, but for me, it's riveting, beginning, middle, and end. It's a perfect alignment with my view of Gotham. Again, Jeff Loeb really just crushing this plot line. And you get a great sense of Batman and the urgency he feels to solve these crimes. So this is my Batman Year 2, if you will, which means number 1 on my list has to be Batman Year 1. And again, another absolute edition. This is a double version. For those that have not ever seen this, there's another video on my channel where you can check out this Year 1 set and kind of what it looks like. You get the original version, plus you get a traditional comic feel version with the original coloring, right? So you get 2 different versions of the story, but it's, basically the same book. But one of them has, nicer printing, coloring, and all that kind of updated artwork, right? But this is the book. That's the book for me that is the Batman. This is my Batman. Frank Miller crushed this, and I think it's far superior to Dark Knight Returns. Not only because it's not an Elseworlds story, but it's the first time I think we've gotten a sort of clear vision of Batman's earliest days and the challenges he faced and the friendships he forged, Harvey Dent and the Commissioner Gordon. For me, it all kind of is beautifully captured here. Even Catwoman given an interesting portion of the story. So that's the one that for me, I read that at least once a year. It's just one of those books that is the Batman story for me. So there you go. My top 10 Batman stories that you need to read. Let me know. Were some of your favorites on here? Was I missing any? Was there stuff that you were shocked was omitted? Sorry, I'm not a Scott Snyder fan. So New 52, I like Court of Owls, but it doesn't rank above these. Like it just doesn't, it's not on the same scale for me personally. So let me know what were your faves. And then I want to say my thank yous. I've got my new Comic Book Day coalition here on the channel. Rob and Sarah holding it down. I appreciate you both. I've got my my X-Men squad. Look at these guys. So many great members of the community, people that are supporting the channel, and I appreciate them greatly. And then my New Mutants. All these homies, so many great members of the channel, and all of them eligible to win the monthly giveaway I've got coming up. It's going to have 2 or 3 variant covers. It's going to have a trade paperback. It's going to have some stickers and giveaway items. So every month I got a box going out from the channel so you can join up and then have your chance to win. Thanks everybody for coming by. Leave me a comment on your favorite Batman books, and I'll be back again soon.